Imagine a world in which you have to always think about your horse, and you have to feed your horse, and you have to take care of your horse, and you can, and it's almost like the horse is a reflection of what kind of a human being you are. If you beat your horse, that means you're also beating your animal soul. If you treat your horse nicely, you ride it in a way that you like the horse, you want to keep the horse in a good mood. And horses are very, there's wild horses, but some are domesticated horses, and they can take it, but they're crying on the inside. This video was made possible through the kind support of my sponsors over at Patreon. Patreon is a great way to help independent creators like myself produce original content. If you'd like to get more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much. So today is a special day for several reasons. The first reason is that in Chabad it's well known, the 22nd day of Shvat is the Yortzeit, the passing away of the Rebbetzin of Chabad, the wife of the Rebbe, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. And she was a very modest woman, nobody knew much about her. We only have like two pictures of her when she was very young and a bit older. And but we know, because the Rebbe told us, that much of his strength, much of his inspiration, just like every Jewish man who's married and who's doing the marriage work, and the Rebbe did it, he would, despite being the busiest man in the world, and not sleeping, and all day writing the letters and learning and teaching and helping people, he every day would have his morning tea with her, and he would be connected to her. And he explained, especially in the end, that she gave him so much of his power of inspiration. So today is her day, so it's a good day to talk about the feminine in all of us, the feminine in our generation. The other thing we have now is unfortunately we all know this is a difficult day for all of us Jews all over the world. It's a difficult time. It's been a difficult time for 15 months, but it's now more difficult, Davka, with all the hostages coming back, and with people that we knew, or we almost knew, that they're probably not alive. It's still difficult to get the news and to see the terrible images of the coffins coming back. And so we really want to dedicate this class to the elevation of their neshamot, especially the four who are coming into burial, probably today or tomorrow, the Biba's mother and two children, and the other one, I forgot his name. Oded Lifshitz. And of course, with all the rest, and we know this is just the beginning, because we know we're going to get more. But Be'ezrat Hashem, we need to take all this anguish and transform it, and find a way to restore our strength. We're practiced as Jews doing this. We've been through worse, actually. And so, but I wanted to address it also. Especially having this, the image of this mother with the two babies, and thinking about Chaya Mushka, who's this very powerful sort of feminine figure in the Hassidic world. She didn't marry to be a mother, but in a way she's the mother of hundreds of thousands of people. Definitely tens of thousands of Chaya Mushkas are named after her. So in a way she was a maternal figure for many people, despite not being an actual mother. And so it somehow connects in my heart, and so I wanted to put that also on the table. And there is another thing. Whoever came yesterday, I mentioned this, but I'm going to explain it a bit more deeper now. So today is exactly 1 week from Tu BiShvat. So Tu BiShvat is like ancient history. Who remembers Tu BiShvat? It's a week ago. But I'm going to tell you now that something I only realized this year, that there is a very, very profound connection between Tu BiShvat and Kaf Bet Shvat, the 22nd day of Shvat. And I never realized this. And so the story is the following. In the Mishnah, there's a debate between Hillel and Shammai as to when is the new year of the trees. Shammai says it's on the first day of Shvat, and Hillel says it's on the 15th day of Shvat. And the Rebbe, in a famous talk, explained where this dispute is coming from. It's coming from, generally we know that the difference between Shammai and Hillel is that Hillel is looking at the po'al, that is the actual things that are going on in the world, what's really happening, when it's coming to the surface, not when it's theoretical, not when it's potential. And Shammai is looking at the potential. So the most famous probably debate between them about the Hanukkah candles reflects this in a very sort of visual way. According to Hillel, we add light every day because every day we grow stronger and we become more solidified, and we're more, the temple is more in our hands and we're more in control, the light is growing. Shammai, you reduce the candles. Why do you reduce the candles? Because every day your strength is, you're actualizing more of it, so the actual potential that you have is sort of diminishing until you exhaust your potential, and then you're left with one candle. So they have, this is a common thread. So, okay, what's the connection to the first verses of the 15th day of Shvat? Shalom. The connection is, he says, really, what's the story of why Shvat at all? So the reason it's Shvat is that Shvat is 4 months from Tishrei. And Tishrei is when the rains are beginning. And the idea is that the rains come into the world and then they filter into the ground, but it takes time for the sap to start rising in the trees, meaning for the tree to get nourished from the rain of this year. Throughout the first 4 months of the year, the train is still growing from last year's rains. And it takes 4 months for the water to seep in and go through the roots, and then to turn into sap, and for the sap to rise. And somewhere in Shvat, the sap begins to rise, and you see the first flowers in the almond tree, especially. We have almonds here also. And then this is really now the rains, the plenty, the abundance of this year. It's now becoming noticeable in the trees. Okay, so what's the difference between the first and the 15th? So it's really all about Rosh Hashanah versus Sukkot, because we're counting back 4 months. So Hillel is saying, when are we sentenced to all the rains and the waters? It's said that it happens in the Chag, meaning the first day of Chag Sukkot. It's the 15th day of Tishrei. So that's when we are, it's after Yom Kippur, and then Nidonim al Hamayim. The sentence, the heavenly sentence as to how much rain is going to fall everywhere in the world, it's decided on the 15th day of Tishrei, so 4 months later, Tu BiShvat. But Shammai says, no, it started, everything was really, the big court for everything was Rosh Hashanah, it was the first day of Tishrei. So it should be 4 months after that. Okay, so that's the two opinions. But taking you back to Tishrei, when do we start mentioning that it's time for rains to fall in the world? We're not asking yet. We're mentioning the fact. We're saying, Mashiva Ruach Morida Geshem. It doesn't happen on the 15th day of Tishrei. When does it happen? It happens on the 22nd day of Tishrei. Because we have Shmini Atzeret. We're waiting for Sukkah to end. And then we're saying, now is the time, the actual real time, in which rains begins to fall. And we stop doing that on the first day of Passover. First day of Passover, we start saying, Morid Tal. So that's the natural season. We're not yet asking for rain. We're mentioning that according to the laws of nature, the time for the actual rain, this is more actual than Hillel even. Hillel says we're actually sentenced to rain on the 15th day of Tishrei. But this, both Shammai and Hillel, it's about the heavenly decree. It's still somewhere up there, in a more theoretical, or we can call it masculine level. Shammai is even higher, because it says the root, it all began Rosh Hashanah. That's where the beginning of the sentencing of the water, of the abundance began. And Hillel says, no, you're going too high. Let's go a bit lower. It's only on the 15th day of Tishrei. That's when the water really, the sentence really sort of dropped in the heaven, and it fell, and now, and then 4 months later. But we know that we can go further down, because the real rains of this world, they start coming down, or naturally would come down on the 22nd day of Tishrei. So now we have a third opinion, a third proposition for when Tu BiShvat we should celebrate it. And it's the 22nd of Shvat, which is today. So in a way, today is the real Tu BiShvat, even more than Hillel. And it's embodied by the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. So now what's the deeper story? The deeper story is that why it's, and it's marked by a woman. It's not Shammai and Hillel. Shammai is more masculine, Hillel is more feminine, but they're both men, and they both talk about something that's relatively high. But the day that the rain actually falls, which is actually 4 months later, that the sap is now rising in the tree, that is the day that has become identified with a feminine figure, with the represent Chaya Mushka. Why? Because this image of the sap rising, which is water rising, water is usually it falls down. When it rises, it's because it evaporates, right? But in plants, because this is the day of the trees, the day of the plants, in plants you have this capillary, I think it's called the capillary motion, I don't know the exact term, but it has this structure that the stem of the leaf and the bark of the tree, whatever it is, the water is able, the actual water is not evaporated water. Actual water rises in the form of sap within the tree and gives it life. So this is a very feminine movement. So it's no coincidence that the day that is 4 months to the day of the rains actually falling would be that day. Just to cap off, to finish off this idea, so we on the 22nd day of Tishrei, we start saying, Mashiv Aroch Marid Geshem. That's the natural time for waters to fall, but we don't yet ask. We don't say Ten Talu Matar Livracha, right? Give us dew and rain for a blessing. Why? Because people are still in the back of the day of the temple, they would still be on their way home. We don't want them to be drawn back with rain. So we say, okay, so we know it's the time for rain, Hashem, that's why we're blessing. Mashiv Aroch Marid Geshem. But please don't, if you can still please hold off and wait. And then when do we start asking for rain? We don't always merit to have it answered that day. The rains often start, maybe not in LA, but the rain often starts before that date. But we start asking for the rain on, of course, Zayin Cheshvan. Zayin Cheshvan, what's 4 months from Zayin Cheshvan? That's Zayin Adar. Zayin Adar is both the birthday and the passing away of Moshe Rabbeinu. What's the connection here? Connection here that if we were all tzaddikim and everything would be governed according to our prayers, then the rain would actually fall only on the 7th of Cheshvan. And then the Tu BiShvat, the 4th day of Tu BiShvat, would be Zayin Adar, the day of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is once again a masculine figure, because this is something very high, that this is only if we're all Amech Kulam Tzadikim, if we're all righteous, and all the world is governed according to our prayers, then it would be on the... So we have very interesting thing here, that we have the 1st, and the 15th, and the 22nd, and the 37th day, which is really the 7th day of Adar. And just to show you that this is a very interesting time, this idea, is that those 37 days, from the first day of Shvat, we're in the middle of them, from the first day of Shvat to the 7th day of Adar, these are the days in which Moshe Rabbeinu, who passed away in Zayin Adar, said the entire book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy. He started saying the book of Deuteronomy on the first day of Shvat, and he finished, he passed away on the 7th day of Adar. Devarim is, relatively speaking, within the 5 books of Moses, this is all about Moshe as a human being this time, not as this angelic or supernatural being who can stay, on Mount Sinai 4 days without eating or drinking. This is Moshe not prophesying, but saying of his own words, echoing the Torah, Mishneh Torah, repeating the Torah that he heard from Hashem, but in his own voice. But it's really it's Moshe, so it's also a divine revelation, but it's a revelation from below. So the whole idea of Tu BiShvat, which we now saw Tu BiShvat extends all the way from the first day of Shvat to the 7th day of Adar. It's all one big Tu BiShvat in a way, because we had 4 opinions that covered this entire span as to when Tu BiShvat is. So now we know Tu BiShvat is really 37 days long, counting from the very first day we can start, according to Shammai, ending with the very last day for all tzaddikim. And it goes by Moshe Rabbeinu. So this is the sap rising. This is like Moshe Rabbeinu not receiving the Torah from above, but internalizing it and then repeating it in his own words. And the message for all of us is that, and I always say this, the only way to internalize the Torah, to really take it in, take it to heart, is we have to take it in, we have to digest it, and we have to absorb it, and then we have to repeat it in our own words. and it has to be in our own words. And then not only do we share it with others, which is a wonderful thing, it's everyone should share whatever you learn something, you have to give it away. You can't, it's like a hot potato, you have to, but it's not a hot potato because you do have to take in the heat and absorb it and hold it. Meaning, but you have to always have in mind that you have to share it. But not only that, not only do you share it with others, but you understand it to a degree that you couldn't have understood it before because you're saying it in your own words. When you say it in your own words, this is what David HaMelech said, Shiru LaHashem Shir Chadash. He repeats it again and again. A new song. We need new songs all the time. If the old songs, that's like an old Torah. It's dry. Maybe it's from my parents' Torah. Maybe it's my old self-Torah. It could be my yesterday's self-Torah, but it's not my today's self-Torah. And so when you learn something, you have to internalize it to the point that you can repeat it like Mishneh Torah. It's the second time, and it's the but what happened in between is that you processed it, and you imprinted it with a touch of your own neshama, and then it also means that it really landed within you because you're able to express it in your words. If you're just repeating verbatim. How do you say that word? Verbatim. If you repeat verbatim, because I remembered that I was once corrected already. If you repeat what the Rebbe, what the Rav, or whatever you read in the book or you heard in the class, you're repeating in the same words. It doesn't echo real, right? It's not things that come from the heart, and therefore they don't reach the heart. They have to come out of your heart. It means that your heart has to be there, and to absorb it and to think, mull over it. Until it's integrated into your DNA almost, and then it flows from you in your words. So this is what Tu BiShvat really is. That's the new year of the trees. And we are like trees in the sense that we're rooted on the ground, not rooted in the heaven. Our souls are rooted in the heaven, but our psyches are rooted in the ground. And so we need the sap to rise within the tree. And that's the rain, the 4 months of rain, that's like learning and learning. 4 months is like usually a semester in most academic places. So you learn for 4 months, but then you have to internalize it, integrate it, and express it, and that's Tu BiShvat. So it's beautiful. These are the 37 days of the book of Devarim. And you remember that Moshe first, when we first hear him speak, which is when God is revealing to him in the burning bush, he says, "Lo ish devarim anochi." I'm not a man of words, but he ends up writing a whole book called Devarim, which is just a bunch of very long speeches. It's like a speaker speaks endlessly, and he wrote the whole book from his own words, his own Devarim. So he says, "Lo ish devarim anochi." And so I'm going to show you how much of an ish devarim you are. Right now you're stammering because you're only now discovering Hashem and discovering the Torah, and you're just a student. But wait, 40 years from now you're going to be so much an ish devarim. You'll have a whole book called Devarim that under your name. And 37, the gematria of 37 has several words, but the most well-known word is hevel. Hevel is like the breath that comes out of your mouth. It's the words that you speak. So it was the hevel, the breath of Moshe coming out of his mouth as he was speaking for 37 days. That's and another word, by the way, is yechida. The yechida of the soul also equals 37, equals hevel. So it was very external. It was the hevel coming out of his mouth, but it expressed the yechida of his soul that got integrated with the Torah so much. So much for introduction, just to get into warm up and get into this day. The title I gave this class is Like a Bridge Over Troubled Water. Well-known song written by two Jews who may not have been so consciously connected to their Yiddishkeit, but blessed a whole generation with their very beautiful and kind words. And I realized that this image of a bridge, which is sturdy, which is unmoving, on which you can stand over waters that are the very opposite. They're troubled, they're constantly moving, they're shifting, you never know what's going to happen next. Right? That's the beautiful image that as poets, right? Singers, poets, the artists of the generation, they gave so many people. It's a wonderful image to talk about a concept in Chassidut, which is called the unification of lowliness and mercy. Lowliness and mercy. Lowliness is here would be the turbulent or troubled waters, and the mercy or compassion would be the bridge over them. So that's what I want us to understand today, the combination of these two elements within each of our souls. But we need to go one step backwards as a background. And but maybe before I go on, I just mentioned this before, it would help me to have some kind of watch. And because yesterday I spoke and 3 hours went by, I didn't notice. and people they feel uncomfortable. Now, when did I start? So what's going on here? Oh, so we're 20 seconds to 11. When did I start?
Like 20 minutes ago.
20 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're starting
Hmm?
now.
Yes, starting now. Usually people can take an hour. People can take an hour. And I'm gonna try. Okay, so Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg has over 100 books, over 150 books, I think, to his name. But all of these books, there's one short essay, which in Hebrew is called Perek Be'avodat Hashem. I don't think it was ever probably translated here and there. A lot of people gave classes on this essay. It's one short essay with a very modest title, Perek Be'avodat Hashem, like a chapter in Avodah, in how to do the inner work. Now we're in Parashat Mishpatim. The very first topic discussed in Parashat Mishpatim is Eved Ivri, the Hebrew. You can translate it as slave or servant, but a literal translation would be the Hebrew worker, he who does the work. And this is like a key word for all of the inner work that we as Jews are supposed to do, that Chassidut calls upon us to do, Avodah Pnimit, Avodat Hashem, serving Hashem, working on ourselves to serve Hashem. So this is rooted in a beautiful way in the very first words of this parasha to talk about Eved Ivri. And maybe we'll talk about it a little more going further in. So he called this essay Perek Be'avodat Hashem, a chapter, like I want to contribute a little chapter, a little addition to the big topic called Avodat Hashem. Really what he's doing there is he's trying to integrate two of his spiritual worlds. The first world is Chabad, and the second world it has to do with a figure who is a bit less known, but people are getting to know him. His name was Reb Usher Freund. Mm-hmm. Reb Usher Freund was a very, very special Jerusalem Hassidic rabbi, not Chabad. Many generations, I think, in Israel, from the Yishuv Yashan, the old, the old communities of Yerushalayim. Hassidic, a very, very special individual, and he was like a rebbe in some ways, in the sense that people would come to him and he would help them, he would give them blessings, he would give them advice. Sometimes he didn't know what to do, he would give them a little painkiller. Just give them a little pain. I don't know what they can do. Take a little painkiller. But he was also a very, very modest person who was the main thing he did. He ran a jewelry shop in Yafo Street, and he also did a lot of charity. And he did it himself. He would go to the market and take all the vegetables that remained at the end of the day, and he would spread them out. And he founded this very, very big charity foundation that's still operational, Yad Ezra in Israel, and he would, like in his own bedroom, there would be all the cucumbers and tomatoes and onions, and his whole house was one big balagan because of this thing. But he was also like a rebbe, and like with stories almost like the Baal Shem Tov, of knowing what you're about and seeing things from afar and the crazy things, unbelievable things. And so in what way is this essay Perek Be'avodat Hashem a combination of these two approaches? He takes a key word from Chabad and a key word from Reb Usher, and he's saying these words, these two terms, are very much complementary. We need to really, really work on both, and then we have a perfect balance. And sometimes if we only focus on one of them too much, we lose the other one. And he felt with Reb Usher something was missing. That's why he went to Chabad. But when he went to Chabad, he also realized something was missing. He didn't leave Chabad, but he tried to bring it and accentuate it and put his emphasis on it. What are the two terms? The term taken from Chabad is bitul. Bitul is going to be translated either as nullification or self-nullification, that you become as ein, as nothing. You want to serve Hashem, put your all into serving Hashem, into davening, into studying, and you don't think about yourself at all. You don't exist. It's like you don't have an ego. So it could be self-nullification, or another term is selflessness. Selflessness. You don't have an ego, you don't have a self. And this repeats a lot of time in the Tanya and in the Rebbe referred to it, and people talk about it all the time. Oh, don't have the pride, don't have the ego, you should be in bitul instead of bitul, and so on. What was the term that was central to the teachings of Reb Usher? It was a different term. This was the term that I mentioned already, lowliness. In Hebrew, this is shiflut. Shiflut. Shiflut sounds very, very close to bitul, because you would think the opposite of bitul is like having a yeshut, having a sense of being, a sense of self, a sense of ego. So that's like a negative opposite of bitul. Everything has two opposites. You think about the word love. What's the opposite of love? Some people would say hate. That's a negative opposite. Some people would say fear. Love and fear, ahava v'yira. It's a good opposite. So you can take opposites in all kinds of ways. So same goes for bitul. The negative opposite of bitul is yeshut. I'm not ayin, I'm not nothing, I'm something, and I feel important, and I feel that I'm a thing unto myself. That's usually the term. Yesh v'davar b'fnei atzmo, but that's not what we're talking about. Shiflut is the positive opposite of bitul. Shiflut is, I do have a self, I do have an ego, and I can't get rid of it. I can't tell myself, it doesn't work when I tell myself, be in bitul, I can't. My self is here, my world is here. What can I do? I can remember that I'm very small, that I'm very helpless, that I'm very fragile, and that I really need Hashem to help me. I'm low. I'm in a state of lowliness, shafel. Who is the biblical figure who embodies bitul more than anyone, and who is the biblical figure who embodies shiflut more than anyone? The figure embodying bitul is Moshe Rabbeinu. That, we said now this is 37 days. Moshe Rabbeinu, once he became a prophet, he had the transparent pain, aspaklaria meira, totally transparent. It wasn't him. He could forget about his body, he could go up, he could leave his wife, which is something that's not demanded, it's even reprimanded for anyone else. He was only dedicated to Hashem, and he could bring down the Torah, this one-time historical event, because he was in such a state of bitul. And we are told that from he was half human, half divine, half like something divine we can understand. So he embodies bitul. The term that he used was the hint, the illusion that was his thing, was that he said, he included Aaron in the mix, but it was really about him. He said, V'nachnu ma. What are we? We are as nothing. V'nachnu ma. And ma is like a code name for bitul. Ma, it means what, but it's like what here is like, it's like nothing. So what are we? And like it's a rhetorical question, meaning we are nothing. Who we are? What are we? We're nothing in the picture. And he says this when he's bringing down the manna bread. He's bringing down the manna bread through his bitul, his nullification, his selflessness. So it's very high. And we know that when he passed away, when Aaron passed away, all of Israel mourned him, both the men and the women. When Moshe passed away, only the men mourned him. And the women didn't mourn him because there was something about him that was too masculine, too transcendent, too much bitul, too much above reality. It couldn't relate. There was something unrelatable, especially to women, probably also to the feminine part of the men, who they couldn't relate.
Sorry. If you back up a little bit, I thought I heard you say that he could beat his wife.
No, I said he could leave his wife.
But it sounded like that.
He could leave his wife.
Leave his wife.
Yeah.
Leave his wife.
Did you hear that also? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify it.
He could leave. He could be away from his wife for 40 years.
Okay, no, I just heard it.
That's like superhuman. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm sorry. Maybe I said B. I don't know.
If I heard it, I thought maybe no.
When he comes back, maybe he'll be his wife. He'll be with his wife to the point. He'll be with his wife to the point that he can feel her again. The embodiment on the other end of the spectrum, we have the ultimate human, the most human of biblical figures who embodied Shiflut. That's David HaMelech. David HaMelech is the most relatable. Every woman in the world and every man in the world, we all say Psalms, and it touches our heart instantly, and we relate to him. We relate to him because he is imperfect. If we would have had if Sefer Shmuel Bet would have been the official biography, as some people say, they say, oh, it's just the whole book is from the perspective of that, and Melachim, it's also from the perspective of the kingdom of Yehuda, and so on. But I've never heard of any official biography in the history of the world that gives you so much of the king's sins and flaws and mistakes, and present him in such a human, relatable way. So clearly, this is not some official state biography. It's very much a reflection of his humanity. And he said, "Vayiti shafal be'enai," in a situation that's very different than bringing down the manna bread, which is like a divine miracle. He won over the Ark of the Covenant from the Philistines, and he's taking it back to Yerushalayim. He's not bringing something from heaven down to earth. He is elevating something. He's coming from the ground up. He's elevating the Ark to Yerushalayim, and he's just overjoyed, and he's dancing with all the simple folk, all the servants and all the maidservants, and he's rebuked by his wife, Michal, who's the daughter of the previous king, Shaul, and he tells her, I don't see it as a sin that I danced with all of them, that I was together with all the simple people, because I don't feel better than them. Vayiti shafal be'enai, I'm lowly in my own eyes. And also for them, they respected me. They didn't look down on me. You think a king shouldn't behave this way. It's like improper for a king to dance the way I dance and to mix with all those people. But I feel that I'm even less than them, not even equal. I feel that I'm less than them. And I may be on the outside, I may be the king, but on the inside I feel that it's not for me, it's coming from Hashem. But this is not bitul, it's something else. It's a state of constant gratitude and constant awareness of how fallible I am. I am fallible. In the word shafal, shiflut, you have the root of the word nafal, which is also the root of the English word to fall. To fall comes from nafal, has to do with shafal, with shiflut. That and fallible has to do with making a mistake, which means also like a kind of falling. So I'm fallible, but Hashem is blessing me all the time. That's why he says that I need to thank Hashem with every breath that I take. So going back to the essay by Rav Ginsburg, he is saying, it starts with the following sentence. He says, Shiflut ubitul atzmi hema hamehavim et metziut ha'adam ha'metukan. Translated, lowliness and self-nullification, together, they form the rectified human being, the rectified person. Rectified person would be a combination of both. How do we combine them, the Moshe element with the David element? So this is one of the most profound and beautiful ideas in Chassidut, is giving us a description of Mashiach, we should all try to embody in some way. The description of Mashiach is, we know that Mashiach would be a descendant of David. So like physically he would come from David. But we also know that it would be Moshe coming back. Hu Goel Rishon, Hu Goel Acharon. He was the first redeemer from Egypt. He will be the last redeemer. He'll take us out of the exile. So he would be like an incarnation of Moshe. So the idea is that Mashiach would be Nishmat Moshe Beguf David. The soul of Moshe in the body of David. The soul of Moshe in the body of David. So that means that we need to take a soul and the body is like a light in a vessel. Translated into our concepts, we need to take the light of selflessness or of nullification and put it in the vessel of lowliness. If you only talk about nullification, it's like you're disconnected from your nefesh. You ignore your issues. You ignore your nefesh. You ignore your flaws. You ignore your pain. You ignore your fear. It's like Psalms don't speak to you so much. So you read it because you have to read it maybe. But you only identify with Moshe because you're only thinking about Bitul all the time. And so you're saying, and then it's like a bridge, but then there's no water under the bridge. It's you're standing on some bridge, you're on some tower, and you're saying, "Oh, I have a lot of gaive, but I want to get over my gaive. I want to be nullified to Hashem. I want to just work and pray and do what I need to do and help others put tefillin, whatever it is that I'm doing." But this is it's like you're imagining that you're with Moshe in Mount Sinai for 40 days, and the Israelites at the bottom. You forgot about them in some way. They may be building some golden calf, maybe. Maybe they're afraid you're not coming back. Maybe they're saying, "Oh, that Moshe, we're not going to mourn him," and then they don't mourn him. All this feminine aspect is sort of lost. It could happen. It could happen. In our generation, we see it often. We see people who are frum and they serve Hashem. And they're very dati, and everything is on where it should, supposedly where it should be. But when you're looking for their heart, you feel something disconnected. You feel an inner disconnect. Even something happened that we need to be aware of. That the fact that the Rebbe decided to make a major shift in the mood and the mood of Chabad. By turning it into a militant, in a good sense, into a military-like, operational, active Chassidut from a very introspective Chassidut. He turned it into an extroverted Chassidut. He knew what he was doing. He realized this is not the time to sit with your deep Hasidic meditations when people don't know the Aleph-Bet of Judaism. And people are lost to assimilation, people are lost to so many things, and they need to remember what Judaism is all about. This is the time to go out there and be a soldier and take a mitzvah tank and do mivtzoim and so on. But every generation, we need to realize that we're making a certain, swerve, and that's wonderful. He knew what he was doing. But it just means you have to put it in check. You have to make sure, and he also said, that even if you're all day you're doing Mivtzoim, you have to take an hour a day to be like the old kind of Chabadnik. The old kind of Chabadnik is the one who sits alone and does the inner work. But it's hard. It's very hard because all of you are at the external action, which is a form of bitul. Because you're saying, I'm not thinking about myself. I have a Chabad house, I have shlichut, I have things to do. It's a form of bitul, right? Bitul is bringing things down. I'm bringing mana to everyone. I'm giving them Torah, giving them help. I'm helping them wherever they are. So I'm outside of myself. So in order to balance it, in order to make sure we don't become an army in a negative sense, an army that is sort of marching onward, but then something is trampled on, something is forgotten, we need to reawaken an element of hitbonenut pnimit, of avodah pnimit, right? The eved ivri, that avodah we do on the inside. We need to reawaken it. I think that's what Rav Ginsburg saw in Rav Usher. In Rav Usher, he saw someone who is constantly in touch with his aching soul, with his aching nefesh, not his aching soul, someone like David, like King David, someone who told you, who echoed the fact that you're a mess, that we're all a mess, that it's okay to acknowledge it, that you need to be connected, because in the pain and in the anguish and in the confusion lies the authentic connection to God. Otherwise, it's not authentic. It's like the bridge without the water. So the turbulent water were there in the life of Reb Usher, in the souls that came to him were the most broken, the most shattered, or people in the broken state. And he would tell them the point is not to get rid of your pain, the point is to carry your pain with you and to realize that this pain and this anguish, that's the bird of your soul, that's the is there like an equivalent term for that in English? Tzipor HaNefesh. Yeah, it's a term in Hebrew, Tzipor HaNefesh. Tzipor is the most precious part of the soul, of the heart, Tzipor HaNefesh. And this is the source of your prayers. This is the source of your connection to Hashem. You connect to Hashem from what you don't have, from what you don't understand, from what you can't get over. And falling down is the natural state. David HaMelech was a constant faller. He wasn't supposed to be born. He was supposed to die, to be stillborn. But he got, as a gift, as a free gift from Adam, 70 years. Until he took his last breath. But he was very much aware with every breath that he took that this is a matnat chinam. He was like, what's the word? When you do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Yeah, but he was like resuscitated constantly. He felt that he was being breathed life into by Hashem. And he had this kind of gratitude. This is his shiflut. This is the turbulent water that's under the bridge. And so shiflut is basically saying that I am inherently flawed, and I'm inherently not rectified, and I need to acknowledge it, not pretend that I'm not, and I need to also remember that in a very profound way, I don't deserve anything. I can only be grateful for what Hashem is giving me, and that is now the thing is, and that's maybe what was missing with Reb Usher. Reb Usher only talked about remembering this kind of lowliness that you have, and he would use the word again and again, shiflut. But then what was missing, I think, for Rav Ginsburg, being very close to him, was the divine inspiration and wisdom and the invitation to nullification that you get from immersing yourself in a beautiful, amazing, very divine Torah. Because you only talk about how difficult it is and how painful it is, and you're down there. And his students, to this day, that's how they speak. And it's all about, come down from the statue that you built, from the tower that you built. Come on, be here, and acknowledge the problems that you have and stop running away from them. And only if you really realize how shattered you are, then you start really living and you start getting over your problems but then it's something that's not elevating about it a little bit. So he said we need both. We need the soul of Moshe in the body of David, or the soul, the light of nullification in the vessel of shiflut. Shiflut is not enough, but it's the best vessel. Now, on a psychological level, it means that I need to be on both levels on the inside. It means I need to be very much connected to my heart, what my heart is telling me, where my heart is. What is it? The heart whispers. It's in pain. It has difficulty. It has a hard time living, a hard time breathing, a hard time getting up. And I need to be connected to this heart. I need to listen to it. And that's the lowliness. That's the source of my lowliness. And that's the ground of my being. And the ground of my being is what I stand on and what I work with. And this constant state of falling, David, we're not just that he was supposed to be a nefel, stillborn is nefel in Hebrew. We say about him that his sukkah is constantly falling. Sukkah David hanofelet. Now, it didn't fall in the past. It's now falling. It's falling all the time. It's constantly falling, free fall. That's his existential state. And if you run away from it, if you're trying to pretend it's not there, if you're trying to sort of avoid it, then you're not meeting yourself in some important way. So the loneliness is being really connected to that, but not letting that be the whole story, the whole narrative. That's the ground of your being. That's the source of empathy with other people. That's the source of not being judgmental with other people because you realize how much you have to work with. People who are judgmental are people who are disconnected from their own problems, their own issues. And the moments that we are disconnected from our own issues, that's the when we start looking on the outside and seeing that flaw, seeing that fault, and seeing the other person. And then we start, why? Because we're disconnected from our own, and if you're connected to your own fallibility, your own shiflut, and you look at and you see other people's problems, you say, "Oy, halevai, I should one day in my life rectify like the recurring problems that I'm having before I can even imagine, being angry at them or being critical of them, and sometimes even like losing my ground because of what they're doing. It could be your partner that I can't believe that he's doing it, but it's as if you're perfect, right? And seeing your own imperfection is vital to being really grounded in your psyche. And the other side of it is that you have to be constantly inspired by new Torah and new wisdom, and to do your best to lose yourself in it. And shiflut, lowliness, is a vessel for the light of the neshama to work in. Because if you're connected to this level, then you can hopefully strive towards some sort of bitul without cheating yourself, without pretending that you're now all your problems are solved, you have this emunah, everything is wonderful, everything is great, and then you appear to not understand people who are broken, people who have a hard time, because you ignore your own brokenness and your own problem. So, but if you notice, I still haven't talked about mercy or compassion. I spoke about the two basic elements. Before I move to the compassion element, a beautiful allusion in our parasha. We started with the first laws that were given in Parashat Mishpatim are Eved Ivri. Now, if you look at the word Eved, right, it's Ein Bet Daled. You look at the word Ivri, very close, it's Aleph Bet Reish Yud. Daled, how does a Daled look like? A Daled is a Reish with a little point sticking out at the back. In a way, it's a Reish and a Yud. Eved becomes Ivri. The next word, you just take the Dalet, you break it into two parts, and you take that dot and you put it on the other side, at the end of the word. The word Eved becomes the word Ivri, visually. You can animate it. That the Dalet is broken into a Reish and the Yud, and the Yud shifts, and then you become Ivri. So what is that telling us? Dalet and Reish both allude to a state of kind of poverty. Dal is someone who's poor, and the state of poverty is called dalut, even closer to dalit, because it has the taf in the end. So dalit alludes to dalut. The Chazal say that they go over the letters in pairs. They're saying the letters are built in pairs. Aleph and Bet are about wisdom and understanding. Aleph is Alephcha bina, I shall teach you bina. That's Aleph and bina. And then they say about Gimel and Daled, they say Gimel is the gvir, the rich person who's gomel. Gomel is giving. Gomel, who is he gomel with? The Dalet. The Dalet is the poor. So they thought that Dalet is, in the Talmud, very basic image, the Dalet is the poor. And the Reish, so that's the Dalet. What about the Reish? Reish is another word for poor. Rash. Rash is probably the Hebrew root of impoverished. Impoverished has the Reish Shin of Rash. So you have the Dal and the Rash. Who's worse off? Who's worse off? Who's really penniless? The answer is the Rash. It says the Harash en lo kol. The Dal has little. Dal, something is Dal, it means it has very little of something. In Hebrew, when you have low fat, like low fat milk, it says Dal Shuman. It's like thin, it's like very thin. It has a little bit of fat, but not a lot. So Dal is someone who has a little money. But Rash is someone who's totally broke. So, we move from Eved to Ivri, it sounds like we're worse off. Because Eved, we had Dalet. So when I was in Eved, Ivri sounds like a better word. Ivri is Hebrew. We're all Hebrews, we're all Ivrim, right? That's what we are. And we don't want to be Avadim. But it turns out that if you move from Eved to Ivri, it looks like it's becoming worse. But that's because you don't realize that there could be a positive rush. A positive rush, so physically or financially, Dal has a little bit of money and the rush is no money, so the rush is worse off down the social ladder. But spiritually, when you think you have something, you're not completely connected to your lowliness. You still think, well, I have this, I have that, I have this talent. No, who gave you that talent? It's all Hashem gave it to you. You have a little bit of things, you have a little bit of mood, a matzav ruach, whatever it is you have, it's Hashem gave it to you. So the rush would be a higher state. But what happens? The Yud is the divine element. The Yud is coming from Bitul. Bitul has to do with the Yud, the highest level. Chokhmah, that's Moshe Rabbeinu's level. And the impoverished state has to do with the Malchut, the lowest level. So the Daled is Dal, he's poor, he doesn't have much, but what he does have, he takes it to himself. The Yud, the divine Yud, he puts it behind, he takes it for granted. Again, Dalet is Reish, but he has a little point behind. The point is the divine point, but he's not grateful for it, because now we're going to see that Eved is less good than Ivri. Eved is Dal, but he's saying, I have something and it's mine. I took it and I take it for granted. I put it behind me. But now, when Eved becomes Ivri, it's evolved. The Eved becomes Ivri, he's saying, it's not for granted, it's not mine. I don't have anything. I'm a Rush. I'm not a Dal. I'm a Rush. I have nothing. And this divine point is given to me constantly, every moment. I put it in front of me, not behind me, and I become an Ivri. And you can even take the word Ivri, and you can give it like three meanings, as like a journey that you go through. The first is Ever is the root of Avarian. Avarian is someone who's doing something wrong. The Eved Ivri is someone who was sold into slavery because he couldn't pay off his debt. He was a thief sometimes. Sometimes the Eved Ivri is someone who was a thief, couldn't. So you reinstate him to society, or you reintegrate him by having him being Eved Ivri. So the first is, I have my flaws, my problems, I'm an Avarian. And then I realized that time is fleeting. Zman over. It's over every day. And every day I should be grateful. Avarian has to do with the past. Over has to do with the present. Every moment I have to seize the moment, and I have to daven, and I have to feel that, again, being grateful for it. And then I can get to the other Ever, the other side of the river, the divine side of the river. I can connect to God. That's the Yud in front of me, pulling me. So the Reish and the Yud, basically the Reish is the lowliness, and the Yud is the divine wisdom that's coming when I'm in a state of nullification. With the Eved, took it for granted, and then you're an Eved. You don't need to be an Eved. Even for an Eved Ivri, it's temporary. But you need to transition from being an Eved to being a true Hebrew, a true Ivri, is to take that divine element, realize it's not yours, and it's not to be taken for granted. And then you're a Rush, you're totally lowly, you're saying, I need God, I can't live without God, He's giving me everything. And then you're not bitter, and you're not upset, and you're not angry at life, and you're not saying what I could have had, and maybe I should have had, I could have had. It's like it could have been much, much worse. And whatever I have, I should be so grateful, so thankful for it. And this is the Rush, he doesn't have anything. And then the Yud is in front of him, pulling him, and telling him there's so much more to learn, so much more to connect, so much more to do. Focus on that, don't focus on pitying yourself. Okay. Now, when we talk about, we have these two levels. We have the level of this divine light, divine wisdom that you get through nullification. We have the state of lowliness. When you think about how do we connect them, so they connect in two ways. And then it creates a four-level a picture. The lowest level is lowliness, the highest level is bitul. Lowliness comes up into bitul. It becomes, what does it become? What enables bitul to be less austere and serious and lofty? If you're studying Torah and you're in a state of bitul, or you're doing a mitzvah, you're helping people, you're in a state of bitul, the lowliness, you're not focusing on so much now. It's in the background, because now you're focused on doing what you need to do. But it comes up. It's present in your life. How is it present? That's the mark, if you're lowly or not. The answer is if you're joyful. If you're doing it with joy. If you're being very serious and strict about it, then you're forgetting yourself, your soul, and your fragility, your fallibility, and all this. If you're connected to your humanity, you would be in a state of bitul, but in a state of joy. That's the right tzaddik. The right tzaddik is only studying Torah, but he's positive. He's positive. He's smiling. He's being joyful about it. Where does he get it from? From his lowliness. If he was judgmental of everyone and angry at everyone, he's disconnected from his lowliness. So lowliness sort of goes up and becomes the second level from the top, which is joy. Now, what about the what's going on at the bottom? How does my having bitul, connecting to eternal divine wisdom and wanting to be selfless and all this, how does that influence my lowliness, my state of being lowly, being at the bottom, feeling so grounded? So the answer is, it comes across as compassion. Compassion for my own broken heart. And the compassion here is remembering. That's what saves lowliness from becoming depression. Depression is not lowliness. Depression is a mockery of lowliness. Depression is a state of being, is really a state that comes from a certain state of arrogance. Why? Because I'm telling myself I should have been something. I was supposed to be something. I was supposed to have been someone who's very perfect or very successful or very whatever. I shouldn't have had this problem. Why do I have this problem? Why are things not going my way? And then I become depressed. But true lowliness is a state of joy, a state of gratitude, and it's balanced by feeling that God loves me and believes in me and has compassion and mercy over me, despite of everything. As lowly as I may be, as fallible as I may be, even the bad things that I did, Hashem believes in me. That's why every day in the morning I say, bechemla, right, which is another word for rachamim, compassion. Rabba emunatecha. You believe in me, but what I did yesterday was horrible. But you believe in me that today I can be better. And we have to represent God within ourselves also. We need to be compassionate towards our own, wounded or broken child or lost child. The lost child is to represent water. Now it's like the bitul was a very high sort of bridge. But the bridge over troubled water, the image that you get, if you want to illustrate that song, you would imagine a nice little kind of bridge that's close to the water. You can hear the water, right? It's not one of those like train bridges that are, a mile high. This is a bridge, so the bitul is very high, but rachamim, or chemla, the compassion that goes down, is taking care of the inner lost child within us. And remembering that I may be very lost, very broken, and I'm very angry at myself and maybe having this constant problem with myself, my own flaw. That's coming again and again. But you should treat it with compassion. Like it's your child. If it's you, you could be angry at it. But lowliness, meaning that's what I am right now. What can I do? I need to acknowledge it, and I need to have compassion for my own, and then I can have compassion for others. I'm gonna finish this off with a beautiful little Torah from the Yom Yom, the book the Yom Yom in Chabad.
Sorry, wasn't there 3?
Yeah. So now we have 4 levels. You're talking about the 4 levels now.
Yeah.
So the 4 levels. Yes. To sum up. So now we have lowliness at the bottom, and selflessness or nullification at the top. Shiflut vebitul.
I thought that was 4.
And then there's simcha, and then there's rachamim. Simcha is lowliness integrating within bitul. Shiflut integrating within bitul, that becomes simcha, joy. And bitul integrating with lowliness, that becomes rachamim. So the idea is that there's an upper pair and a lower pair. The upper pair is that bitul has to go with simcha. Bitul has to always be with simcha. If I am going to be in a bitul, it shouldn't be something harsh. That's not real bitul. Again, it's ego. How do I know it's not within ego? Because it's joyful. And it means that it goes along, the true bitul goes along with joy all the time. The lower pair is that, and that's something I have to work on all the time, is to have compassion for my own loneliness. To remind myself that God is compassionate, and for my divine soul to be compassionate for my animal soul. That's another word of saying it. Lowliness has to do with the animal soul, and the nullification has to do with my divine soul. But the divine soul should be compassionate towards the animal soul. It's just like a human being riding an animal. You don't hit the animal, you don't curse the animal. You know, Balaam kicked his female donkey, his aton. But that's the opposite of what we should do. We should be very compassionate towards, back in the 19th century, early 20th century, all of America, all of Europe, all the world was full of horses. You don't see horses now because we replaced them with cars. But everywhere, it was so central to daily life. Everywhere you had a horse. And so the car, you take it to the garage, but it's an object, it's a machine. But the horse was like a manifestation of the animal soul that people experience to a degree that we have forgotten about. But imagine a world in which you have to always think about your horse. And you have to feed your horse, and you have to take care of your horse, and you can, and it's almost like the horse is a reflection of what kind of a human being you are. If you beat your horse, that means you're also beating your animal soul. If you treat your horse nicely, you ride it in a way that you like the horse, you want to keep the horse in a good mood. And horses are very, there's wild horses, but some are domesticated horses, and they can take it. But they're crying on the inside. And the same could happen with your animal soul. Your animal soul, you could, beat it into submission. You can. That's when you only have nullification, you don't have lowliness. Lowliness is you are the horse. I am the horse. That's lowliness. I'm the horse. And nullification is I'm the human. But now the horse adds joy to the human, because then the human, the tzaddik, I'm like a little bit of a tzaddik, I'm learning Torah, I'm doing mitzvot, I'm doing shlichut, I'm a bit of a tzaddik. But the horse in me reminds me to laugh as I'm doing it, to smile as I'm doing it, not to be so serious, because you're also a horse. Remember, down here, hello, you're a horse. So, don't be so serious. Be a little bit more, light about it. That's the simcha that goes along with the bitul. And when I'm the horse, I go, oh my God, I'm such a horse, such a donkey. And a horse is even nicer. I should say I'm a donkey, if I'm lowly, if I'm truly lowly. But how do I come out of that? You feel like a donkey, I feel like horrible. So, it's not horrible to be a donkey. But in our parasha, we have the very famous Baal Shem Tov's interpretation of Chamor Son'echa, that you see the donkey of your enemy, of the other Jew who hates you, that you hate, that hates you, that you hate, and you should tell, I'm not going to help him rise up. No, you should help him. The Baal Shem Tov says the donkey, the chamor, is your own chomriyut, your own animal soul, your own body. You think it's your son'echa, but it isn't. It's not your enemy. You should be kind to it. You should help it. You should lift it off the ground. So that's the perfect image, that I'm the donkey. I fell down. The donkey is falling down because there's overweight. That's the image from our parasha. The donkey is collapsing because he's carrying too much. And I can say, oh, I don't care about that donkey. He should get up. I should just shout at him and call him to. But then the Torah says, no. And even if he's your hater, or you think he's imagine, that's what the Baal Shem Tov says. He's not your hater. He's part of you, and you should be compassionate towards your body. Don't hit the donkey. So if I'm the donkey, what helps me is that I'm compassionate over myself. That's where the high element of me, the divine soul, coming down to the animal soul becomes compassion. The animal soul coming up to the divine soul becomes joy. The divine.
Say it again.
So again, you should have the 4 levels in front of you, right? So the 4 levels are bitul, simcha, rachamim, shiflut. Selflessness, joy, compassion, lowliness. The first one is the divine soul in and of itself. It's only in a state of selflessness. The animal soul is only the bottom level. It's only lowly. It's like a donkey. So it's like a donkey and a human being. Now we want to get them together. So the donkey or the horse comes up to the human and tells him, don't be so serious. Why so serious? Do whatever you need to do, but remember that you're also a bit of an animal also. And then things become lighter and more easygoing, and it's like it oils the machine, the nullification machine. And on the bottom, that I'm the horse, I'm the lowliness, or the donkey, the horse, whatever it is, the divine soul comes down and shows compassion. Shows compassion to the animal. And so these are the 4 levels. Very beautiful. It's just one class.
Just a second. We have the lowliness going up to the rachamim.
No, to the simcha.
No.
To the simcha.
No, again. You start with the lowest one, the lowliness. Lowliness is the animal soul.
Okay.
Selflessness is the divine soul.
Okay.
When the animal soul goes up, it becomes the 2nd level from the top. It adds something, it adds simcha, joy, to the selflessness.
Okay. And then the rachamim?
The rachamim is the divine soul coming down extending downwards towards the animal soul. That becomes rachamim.
It makes sense when you have a perfectionist.
It's 2 things, and then they become like this, right? It becomes like this. That's what you can imagine. Right? This goes down here, and this goes up here, and then you create something like this.
I'm saying practically, like you have the divine soul that's the perfectionist. If you don't have the joy, right, and you can't laugh at yourself.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, perfect. The perfectionist and the imperfectionist. So the perfectionist is very strict, very severe, very hard. And then he doesn't have any joy or any forgiveness, not to himself, not to others. And there's something very tight about this. So he needs the animal soul, which is inherently imperfect, to add joy to the system, to make him, and then you can also live with the flaws that are always there. The radical imperfectionist doesn't aspire anywhere. He's saying, it's all broken anyway. Everything's broken anyway. And it could be a joy, but it's not such an elevating kind of joy, because it's like smiling toothless. It's smiling and say, that's the way it is. And then the divine soul adds the compassion that pulls you up. It draws you up. It says you have a chance. You can strive towards perfection. You're imperfect. You are imperfect, but you can strive. I'm going to help you strive. And that's the rachamim.
Yeah, gently, right?
Yeah, that's the rachamim. So the final addition to this quartet is another quartet. Maybe it's too much, though. Maybe. What do you think? You have room for another dimension to this whole thing. It enriches the whole structure. So in the Yom Yom, it says that in the Tanakh, the human being, us, there has 4 different words in Hebrew for a man. Could be a woman also, but there are 4 different words. Adam, Ish, Gever, and Enosh. These are, in many verses, appear a little bit interchangeable. Psalms, that's a lot of poems, so Psalms has a lot of verses that are, the first half reflects the second half, and then you have a lot of times, you have Ish and then Enosh, or Adam and then Gever, right? Ma Enosh ki tizkarenu ben Adam ki... There's a lot of verses that one of the words appears in the first half, the other word appears in the second half. So it's 4 like synonyms. But of course in Hebrew there's no such thing as really synonym, because every word is a bit of a different element, a different angle, or a different aspect of the whole. So all of us are Adam and Ish and Gever and Enosh. We all have 4 levels, all 4 levels. So how does it go? So he goes like this. He explains that Adam is the intellectual level. And that's like the divine soul or the divine spark in all of us. We get our intellect from Hashem, from above. And Adam was the name that humanity received from God. Adam. That's the highest level. It's called the perfection of the intellect. In the meaning that deep down I have a tzelem Elokim. I'm a descendant of Adam. And Adam was created directly from the hands of God. So I have this level, very high level. The second level is Ish. Ish is, Adam called himself Ish. He wasn't called by God Ish. When Eve was created, He said, Lazot yikare isha ki mi-ish lukach hazot. And then he names himself an ish, and he names her an isha. Together, it goes together. And ish is the root of what we call, of the word ishiyut. Ishiyut is personality. That's your self-made personality, the name you give yourself. So this is, in the words of the Yom Yom, the perfection of the heart. My intellect, my wisdom, I get from Hashem. That's Adam. I was endowed with intelligence, endowed with wisdom from above. I have a brain. They created the image of God. But then I have to work on it, and I have to cultivate my own personality, my own personal, individual personality, and my talents, and so on. And this becomes the ish. It's still high. These are the top levels. They correspond a little bit. It's not the same thing, but they correspond to what here was the bitul and the simcha, the bitul and the joy. The bitul is Adam. It's not me. God gave me that name, that level. And I worked on myself, and I learned, and I studied, and I developed, and I integrated. And I'm happy about it. I have my ishiyut, and that's the joy element, or it corresponds to the joy element. But it has to do with my ishiyut. Then the Yom Yom jumps to the lowest level. We started with the highest, the one after that, and then it skips the third, it's going to get to it last, and it goes to the lowest one, because that's the level that is now corresponding to our lowliness level. This is Enosh. Enosh was the grandchild of Adam, right? He was the son of Seth. And in his generation, idolatry began. That's the common understanding. As huchal likro b'shem Hashem, that's the verse. Huchal is the word for chulin, chol, the opposite of kodesh. And it's explained that in Enosh, all the great sins, the deterioration basically on the way to the flood began. Well, you could say it began with Adam, who sinned in the tree of knowledge. But after that, Shet was okay, and then when Enosh began the deterioration. Enosh has to do with being weak and being ill. If someone is severely ill, the word we used in Hebrew is chole anush. Anush is severely ill, and it's the exact same letters as Enosh, which is human. Enosh is also the term that in modern Hebrew became the term to talk about humanity in the sense of kindness to people who are weak. It says, you have to be enoshi, enoshiyut. And the main word used today in Hebrew for mankind, you don't say adamiyut or ishiyut, the word doesn't even exist. You say enoshut. Enoshut is humanity. And enoshiyut is being humane, not just being a human, but being humane is being enoshi. And why? Because then you feel for others' flaws. You have compassion over them. Because you see that they're weak and they're flawed. So this is Enosh is the lowly part. That's the broken part. That's the fallen down part. And it leads to idolatry because you're looking for answers, you're looking for promises. It starts with weakness. Why did people invent idols? Because they were weak. And so this is the Enosh part. But the Enosh is at the bottom, and the Adam and the Ish are very high. It's my God-given intellect, and it's my self-made personality. There's a gap. And then you need the Gever. Gever sounds very masculine, but there's also Geveret. And there's also Gvira, right? It's not a masculine thing. In fact, the Sefirah of Gevurah is considered feminine. So, Gever is both male and female. Gever is here corresponds to the level of Rachamim and compassion. Right? All this, it follows the four letters of God's name. The nullification is Yud, the Simcha is Hey, the lower lowliness, that's the lower Hey, and the compassion is the Vav. Vav is like a line that bridges the heavens and the earth, the upper levels and the lower levels. That's the compassion. That's the bridge. The bridge here is a bridge we imagine is something like this, but this is a bridge that is sort of approaching the water and calming the water and helping you maybe come out of the water. So it's a line, it's a vertical line. And so the Yom Yom says, what is the Gever element? And this is in all of us. The Gever keeps his head above the water, the turbulent water. He's connected to the Adam and Ish, the upper levels above him. So one hand is holding up there, and the other hand goes down there to help the Enosh come up. That's the Rachamim. Rachamim is, I'm not lost with you in endless empathy or sympathy, that I'm totally with you and then I can just only cry with you. That's nice, but it doesn't lift you up. It could be maybe a good first stage. I empathize. But now let's wipe our tears and let's start climbing up. And why? Because I'm not lost with you. I remember that you have the potential. I see them, Adam and Ish. You have the potential to be connected to your joy and your bitul and your sense of mission, sense of purpose. And you can reach it. The Enosh doesn't believe it's possible. He is totally collapsed. He collapsed, he fell. He feels constantly falling. But the Gever is there to lehitgaber, to overcome the state of fallenness. So that's another addition to this whole idea that in many ways, now the Yom Yom ends with the word, with the sentence that the Gever is there to tell the Enosh that he can one day be the Adam and the Ish, and he can raise him up. And then it appears like the Gever doesn't have anything to do at the end. It's like Enosh becomes something high, and the Adam and Ish were always high. That's the higher level, the Chokhmah Bina within me. And the Gever is, but in a way, he's the most important. He's facilitating. He's giving life to the whole thing. He's the key element to help the Enosh, the weak element within the lost child, or the lost princess. And the words of Rebbe Nachman, he talked about the lost princess. It's like the Enosh level, same thing, the Malchut, to rise up and connect to its higher potential. So the whole class, the ultimate purpose was to talk about this level, the level of the Gever, the level of the Rachamim. It also means that a good Gever is a compassionate Gever. Right? A good man is a compassionate man. And that's it.
Hi everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please press like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. If you want more English language videos from me, please consider becoming a supporter via Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.